¿Ya está lista tu lista de regalos? Con los ahorros de Black Friday en The Home Depot, llévate gratis una herramienta seleccionada de las mejores marcas como Ryobi o Milwaukee. Cuando compras un kit de baterías seleccionado, escoge entre sierras, multiherramientas y mucho más. Termina tu lista más rápido y pasa más tiempo sorprendiendo a los tuyos. The Home Depot. Haces más. Logras más. Límite de 1 por transacción. Aplica restricciones. Lista completa de herramientas elegibles en la tienda y por internet.
Just in case you missed it, it's the top 5 sports talkers of the day. Now, it's time for Dan Barrero's Top 5 at 5.
Courtney Cronin, now covering the National Football League and the Chicago Bears, based out of Chicago, Illinois, formerly here, is going to catch up with us, we hope, at about 5:30 tonight. It's a 3-hour show. We got Top 5 at 5 now. What do we have?
Let's start with the Minnesota Vikings. They practiced today in preparation for their game in Chicago against the Bears this Sunday. And when the reporters were outside watching practice get ready to go, all of a sudden Justin Jefferson left. People started tweeting and people started talking. Where's JJ? Why did he go back inside? They're practicing. He's not here. Is something wrong? No. The level-headed Ben Gessling, our guest tomorrow at 4:30, reminds everybody.
Calm down.
A couple of hours ago. Justin Jefferson is practicing today. The Vikings are outside today, so he went back inside to stretch his hamstrings, which he does as a regular part of his pre-practice routine every day.
Are we sure?
Before returning for practice once warm-ups were done. Well, you can follow up with Ben tomorrow, but that's
what damage control
he's reporting.
Okay.
He was not listed on the injury report today. The only one that did not participate today was Josh Oliver. Jonathan Bullard was full. Sam Darnold was full after being limited in the walkthrough yesterday. Aaron Jones was full. He's dealing with those ribs. And so everybody was good to go for your Minnesota Vikings today at practice.
I don't think the Bears are as healthy as the, relatively speaking. Now, again, built in is Christian Darrisaw is out this season, right? That's a major loss. No question. But I think they have, in fact, I think, isn't Brisker still out for them? Brisker is, we're going to get into this in more detail tomorrow, but we've all begged the head coach to not be afraid to run the ball. They have run it 50% of the time. They didn't run it particularly well last week. Bears have been awful lately against the run. I think they're like 4th or 5th worst in the league in our average yards per carry given up at like 4.8 something. So, leaving aside, I don't think the weather is supposed to be that bad anyway. The assumption is always you get to Soldier Field games in late November, you better be able to run the ball because of the wind and rain and all that stuff. Even on a dry field, I think there could be a great opportunity for your guy Jonesy to be good. Because the Bears defense, I think statistically has held up pretty well despite no help from the offense. But lately what I've seen is I've seen them get gashed, man, by good running backs. And we have one. In Aaron Jones. Now, A. Jones is okay. He came out of the game briefly.
Yeah.
We got nothing to worry about with him, according to the report.
He's a full participant today. Good fodder for Courtney Cronin at the bottom of the hour as well.
Exactly.
We can talk about it tomorrow, and Courtney will be able to help us with all of that.
You are correct.
I'll save the burglary story because that's not going away. I want to stay on schedule.
Okay.
But the Minnesota Wild are back in action tonight. They're in Edmonton. You'll hear that game right here on the Fan. Oilers have 22 points. They're 4th in the Pacific Division. The Wild with 25, 2nd in the Central. Flowers going to get the start tonight in Edmonton. The Wild were, where's my record? 2-1 against the Oilers last year. And as you recall, the Oilers made the Stanley Cup final, lost the first 3 games, won the next 3 games, and then lost Game 7 in Florida. So your guy Connor McDavid came a game short from hoisting Lord Stanley's Cup.
So a nice matchup for us and a nice opportunity for Flower to continue to show that he's got some life still left in those legs, correct?
I would think so.
So far, he's been fine. We all know. In fact, I think I saw another big Russo screed on Gustafsson. That's the story of the season thus far, although I tend to agree. I know Gustafsson's self-deprecating to a fault, and he's saying a lot of it, I'm getting help with people in front of me, and we all believe and all that. But I think there's something to that. Let's be honest. I mean, there are goaltenders who just give up easy goals, and you say, well, that's not on the defense. It's just you're not making the right number of plays. But when it's working at its best, it's a combo platter, right? It's that the goalie is playing well and handling difficult chances. But the defense is playing in front of him at a high level as well, to a certain extent, making his job a little bit better. It all, when it comes to defense, I think it all works together.
So that game is tonight on the Fan. The Timberwolves game against the Raptors, where they're trying to win for the first time since 2004 in Toronto, is on the Timberwolves channel of your iHeartRadio app. The Raptors will be without Emmanuel Quickley, Bruce Brown, DJ Carton, Bruno Fernando, Kelly Olynyk.
What's going on there?
Who Flip
Load
wanted.
management?
Remember when Flip wanted Olynyk?
Not badly, yeah. That was,
and that's how we ended up with Shabazz
Muhammad and the famous
Ben Howland
interview with Ben Howland, where it didn't go well between me and him, given the accolades that he sent Shabazz Muhammad's way.
Also in that draft, a guy named Giannis Antetokounmpo, the Greek freak, was
Didn't he
drafted.
have another absurd night last night?
Probably.
I think he did.
I don't know.
Yeah.
On the Wolves side of things, Mike,
have you checked out the Philadelphia 76ers record, by the way?
it's not good.
I think he's like 2-12, 2-13.
And Paul George is hurt.
And not only is Paul George hurt, other players, according to stuff that's leaked out of the locker room, they have a come to Jesus players only meeting, and one of the other players, allegedly Tyrese Maxey, basically says, "You want to know the truth, Joel Embiid? We're all sick of you being late to everything. You're late to everything we do. It doesn't matter if it's a team bus or a practice or a shoot around, whatever.
I love
and
that.
It's driving all of us crazy. I love it too.
Good for
Embiid's
Maxey.
bitter that it got leaked, obviously,
Don't be late.
because it was supposed to be. But you know that Embiid is. I'm sorry, he's an incredibly blessed player, but he has been on several levels his own worst enemy. And his effort to turn himself into victim is embarrassing, and I think tells you everything you need to know about dysfunction in Philadelphia.
Mike Conley, who joined you yesterday, you can podcast that. Burrow
How's the
Channel,
toe?
iHeartRadio app. Well, he's questionable for tonight's game. We don't have official word yet.
All right, he's going to play.
Dante DiVincenzo also listed on the injury report as
Toe?
questionable yesterday. That's a back
issue.
A back.
Although I think he was questionable last game and he played.
That's
And
true.
had he had four 3-pointers in the second
It
quarter.
was back spasms, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think that's
so
it.
I think that's the same bit. So you can hear that game on the Timberwolves channel of your iHeartRadio app.
Somebody told me that even though the Raptors have a crappy record, they're actually playing a lot better lately. So I don't know.
These are the games you need to win.
I would say don't sleep on them, but it
Yep.
sounds like they're missing like 7 players.
But here's the thing.
But it doesn't matter anymore. So you're right. You can't sleep on any of this nonsense.
Because if you're going to buy the premise that every night's a bloodbath
Yeah,
in the West, which I do think is factual,
If we lose, is this a schedule loss?
shouldn't be.
No, it can't be.
We've had like
'cause
3
we had-
days
Yeah,
off.
that's true. I forgot.
But these are the games that, because the West is so goofy
Yeah.
and good, you have to handle these
How
games.
about the Lakers, man? How about the kid?
What time's your apology to my guy?
Did he rave about him?
Well, no, I'm just saying my coach, JJ Redick.
Oh, Redick. I thought you meant your
Trudell?
media. Yeah, Trudell.
No.
Okay. Yeah, he's actually done a nice job. And how do you pronounce the kid? Connect? How do you pronounce
Dalton Connect.
Yeah, the other day he had one of those absurd. He did the Jordan thing.
Yeah, the
he
shrug.
had a 3 and did the shrug.
Yeah.
It's a little dangerous.
He had like 80 points in 12 minutes.
He looks like he's the real deal.
So anyway.
Is that it for you?
Win the game against the Raptors.
Yeah, you're right. Just win it, and then
stop screwing around.
because you're probably going to go to Boston and lose. That's the second game of the of the
Sunday
road
afternoon.
trip, right? Sunday afternoon. I'm assuming is that national TV?
Yes,
Got to be right.
it is. Yeah, Luka, by the way, is going to miss at least a week with a wrist injury.
Oh, I didn't see that.
But he'll be back in time to absolutely murder us the
He'll
next
kill
time
us
we play.
and yell it like
F-bombs.
Jimmy Jam,
Charlie
whether
Swanson.
he's there courtside or exactly.
Craig Kilborn.
Right.
He'll be there to MF everybody.
Very true.
That's been yelling at him the whole game.
That's it.
Just in time. His wrist will be fine.
100%. We'll come back with a couple of texts and then prepare for Courtney Cronin. We'll get a Bears scouting report about 5:30.
Black Friday is coming, and for the adults in your life who love the coolest toys, well, there's something for them this year too. Bartesian is the premier craft cocktail maker that automatically makes more than 60 seasonal and classic cocktails, each in under 30 seconds at the push of a button. And right now, Bartesian is having a huge site-wide sale. You can get $100 off any cocktail maker or cocktail maker bundle when you spend $400 or more. So, if the cocktail lover in your life has been good this year, or the right kind of bad, get them Bartesian. At the push of a button, make bar-quality cosmopolitans, martinis, Manhattans, and more. All in just 30 seconds. All for $100 off. Amazing toys aren't just for kids. Get $100 off a cocktail maker when you spend $400 through Cyber Monday. Visit Bartesian.com/cocktail. That's BARTESIAN.com/cocktail.
We will get an IU scouting report as well from Courtney Cronin. That'll be a part of the deal for sure. A little bit of breaking news on the college front. Usually you think of Adam Schefter, you think pro, do you not? But he had an interesting...
Until yesterday.
Well, that's true.
Think of other things now.
This is a college football. I think this is a whopper, as we say in the business. Schefter reporting that the top-ranked quarterback in the ESPN, at least, top 300 for 2025, incoming college, prospect, Bryce Underwood, is flipping his commitment from Louisiana State to the University of Michigan. LSU?
Wow.
To Michigan.
That is a big flip.
Now, it's not a big surprise you'd want to get out of Dodge. LSU's a mess right now, right? I mean, it ain't going good for your guy, Brian
Kelly,
by any means.
Fake accent.
They had another meltdown loss as recently as Saturday. And he did the old foxhole thing. You want to be in a foxhole with us? We're going to fix it. If you don't want to help fixing it, we don't want you in our foxhole, which is great. And he did. Funny thing is, he had no twang. So the twang's gone. I guess when things get really serious, the bayou, the Cajun accent disappears. But I know nothing about Bryce Underwood. But he apparently was very highly touted for whatever that's worth. And if he sticks to this, he would be at Michigan. He'll be in the Big Ten in 2025. You'll be covering him next year.
I will be. And your guy, Dave Portnoy from Barstool Sports, mid-season this year, because quarterback has been an issue for Michigan this season after J.J. McCarthy last year, did mention and committed that he would pay $1 to $3 million every year to the collective so that Michigan could always get a top 10 quarterback. So I'd have to imagine those two are pretty tight now.
Man.
That's what it's come to in college sports. He just got on his phone and said, I'm sick of watching this. I will personally commit $1 to $3 million every year to guarantee that we have a top 10 quarterback. I don't know if this guy will start as a freshman and come right in.
Well, he's not making enough money to do that yet, is he, JJ?
No. Dave Portnoy from Barstool.
I thought you said J.J. McCarthy said he was going to do that.
No.
Oh, okay.
He's going to keep his money.
He'll keep his own money. Yeah, it's because he's on a rookie contract. It's not even fair to him. Maybe the next contract.
Coach Prime just got USC commit, who decommitted recently, to flip.
Yeah, that's true.
And he's going to go to Boulder. So Coach Prime's kind of got this thing going because...
Well, he ain't going to stay there, though. He can be in Dallas.
I don't think he's going to the NFL.
I don't either, but that's the salacious talk on ESPN.
Yes.
It's playing the hits, right?
It is
for sure.
100% playing the hits. Think about that. Deion and Dallas.
Yeah.
That's about as hitty as it gets.
That can't get any hittier.
That's as big as it gets for hits.
Not get any hittier than that for sure. Did you see the Lou Raguse scoop? Our guy Lou Raguse, Care 11.
I did not.
Man, I'll just read this. This is Dateline Minneapolis. Madsen Marcellus Jr., who in 2022 was hired by the Hennepin County Public Defender's Office in a supervisory role, has been disbarred in a ruling this week made by the Minnesota Supreme Court. Marcellus had previously practiced law in Florida, where in 2018 he was suspended for 18 months, then disbarred in 2002. The court's decision does not reflect any new allegations from his time in Hennepin County, but makes the Florida ruling reciprocal in Minnesota. And then there's a long quote about from the court about about his misconduct in Florida, a fraudulent mortgage application. He also violated a court order in a dissolution proceeding, failing to inform a court of the fraudulent nature of that application. And it kind of goes on and on from there. Marcellus never, according to Raguse, reported the Florida discipline to the director of the Office of Lawyers, Professional Responsibility in Minnesota, the court noted. But in an interview with Care 11 News, he said he never hid anything, never tried to evade punishment, and was trying to move forward with his life after a dark period. The legal problems in Florida began in 2013 and then led to that 18-month suspension in 2018. Following his suspension, he returned to Minnesota. Managed to be transferred to active status as a licensed attorney in Minnesota in October 2020. In January 2022, then Hennepin County Public Defender Cassius Benson hired Marcellus. Benson ended up resigning in October 2022 and pleaded guilty this year to tax fraud charges. Everybody knew about my past. I told Cassius I wasn't trying to evade. Marcellus said I worked my butt off and became a manager. with the Minnesota State Supreme Court's ruling, Marcellus is no longer allowed to practice law in Minnesota. And the Hennepin County Public Defender's Office terminated Marcellus this week after the court issued its decision. Sounds like a well-run office, doesn't it? They
seem locked in.
He gets hired and probably shouldn't have been hired in the first place. Where maybe he's on to a better place, but all this stuff should be investigated, should have some impact on hiring him there. But the guy who was doing the hiring ended up resigning after pleading guilty this year to tax fraud charges. The Hennepin County Public Defender's Office apparently run about as cleanly and tightly and as professionally as one could ever hope. Let's go ahead and break early. We'll get to Courtney Cronin in just a couple of minutes. We'll talk Bears. We'll talk Vikings. We'll talk college football, her Hoosiers, my Hoosiers, and who knows what else.
Black Friday is coming, and for the adults in your life who love the coolest toys, well, there's something for them this year too. Bartesian is the premier craft cocktail maker that automatically makes more than 60 seasonal and classic cocktails, each in under 30 seconds at the push of a button. And right now, Bartesian is having a huge site-wide sale. You can get $100 off any cocktail maker or cocktail maker bundle when you spend $400 or more. So, if the cocktail lover in your life has been good this year, or the right kind of bad, get them Bartesian. At the push of a button, make bar-quality cosmopolitans, martinis, Manhattans, and more. All in just 30 seconds. All for $100 off. Amazing toys aren't just for kids. Get $100 off a cocktail maker when you spend $400 through Cyber Monday. Visit Bartesian.com/cocktail. That's BARTESIAN.com/cocktail.
Final segment of the show. The show wrap is always brought to you by American Pressure, commercial grade pressure washer since 1975.
That is the end of the show music that we do. I'm a little surprised. I kind of thought Gaardsy was going to go with like the Indiana fight song, which he might, I'm guessing, include before.
Maybe I'll mix it in at the end. With
Courtney Cronin is wrapped up. She joins us via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline. How many games have you, Indiana football games this season, have you been to in person in Bloomington, Illinois, Indiana?
I went week 4 when they played Charlotte because the Bears were playing the Colts in Indy, and it worked out perfectly to where I could get down there on a Friday, get up early on a Saturday, go tailgate, and then go to the game. I was so close to going for game day when they were playing Washington in late October, but I had to go to Washington, like literally DC, the other Washington
right.
for Bears Commanders. And this is like the moment I was like, you're not 22 anymore, where you can't just survive on no sleep, go do countdown the next day and thrive after, traversing the Midwest to get to DC on no sleep, because I was looking at like all these connections I could make. How do I get from Chicago to Bloomington and then get a ride from Bloomington, drop my rental car off somewhere to get to the Indy airport, then get in at 11 p.m. when I have a 5 a.m. wake up call? Then it was too much. So I told myself in that moment, you'll go to the Big Ten championship game. You owe it to yourself. Yeah. Like, just lock it in. Go ahead and get your tickets. You'll go to the Big Ten championship game. So I still have my sights set out on that because I missed game day the first time it ever went to Bloomington.
You graduated from Indiana in what year?
12.
God.
That's 2012.
2012. Yeah. I, of course, graduated undergrad in 77, stayed there an extra year because I liked it so much, 78. So that's a huge gap. I think what unifies us is when I was there, the football was pretty crappy. Lee Corso had a minute or two, but his best time, I think, was actually after I left. How crappy? I don't even remember. How crappy was the football when you were there? So
I was there for 3 years of Bill Lynch, who you'll remember took over for Terry Hepner after he tragically died in 2000, I want to say like 06. I went to school in 08, so it was 3 years of Bill Lynch. They would always start out the way that everybody does in the Big Ten, like just kicking ass against Western Kentucky and Akron and all of these other like bad teams that they schedule early in the season. And then it would always be like Michigan or Ohio State. And then the onslaught would happen. And so my senior year, after they fired Bill Lynch, after they beat Purdue in 2010, they beat Purdue on the road and then fire the head coach. Like, so if you ever have experienced a cold world, you've never experienced a colder world than that. Just knowing how much that win means to either side. Kevin Wilson was hired.
That's right.
He's from the Bob Stoops tree. He was at Oklahoma as the OC. That's his first gig as a head coach, and then they go 1-11 my senior year.
1-11, I forgot that one. Yeah, that was
a forgettable year. That was not great.
So for people who don't know, I think have some awareness that it's not been a football school. How do you properly capture just the absurdity of the phenomenon of what is seemingly taking place there? They're obviously committing financially as much as they can. Eventually, I still think he'll probably go someplace, but maybe not. Maybe he's old enough to where he's not going to be one of those guys who constantly has to move. But how do you properly convey or capture just how unusual and stunning this story is in Bloomington, Indiana?
Well, people don't know how to act, and I feel like that's why people love Indiana right now and love this story, because the fans are not obnoxious about it. Like when the whole act like you've been here before. Well, we literally haven't, like, ever been this good. 10-0, the best start in school history, an offense that's routinely outside of the Michigan game where, that was a tough test, but putting up 30, putting up 40 points and doing a lot of that on the road. Indiana's a basketball school, and when your brand is known for one thing and one thing only, and it's still associated with a coach who has not coached there since 2000 and what year is that? 2002 when Bob Knight got fired. That's still what people know generally, what people know Indiana for. So the fact that they're now having all this success in football, and they're a top 5 team in the country right now, and they're in the college football playoff rankings, it's so unheard of that you wonder if it's real, and you wonder if it's sustainable. And as an alum, I wonder, are these big boosters, the Cook family, the one who has the whole basketball facility, the Mark Cuban Center, all of the people who have donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to basketball, now that football has shown it can not just have a moment, but is, one of the best teams in the country, that money's got to start going towards football, because football is going to be the money maker. Yeah. Even when they've been terrible, that is still the money maker that ends up pumping up basketball. And that's what I feel like is got to come out of the season no matter what. It was, I get why they gave Sig an 8-year, $72 million extension during the bye week. I think that it's fair to say he would have been in for the Florida job, for whatever other big job opens up this offseason. You found something. You're not trying to get off a winning horse. So it makes sense. Now, he brought his entire JMU staff with him. He's changed a lot of things, the weight room, the strength and conditioning program. But all these guys that he has with him, Curtis Rourke, somebody who was, an Ohio transfer, can you get the same caliber of players into Indiana now that you're going to be recruiting against other Big Ten schools and not guys that were going with you to JMU and you're like, hey, just come with me to the Big Ten for this first year? Like, guys who might not have had a look at a place like Indiana, even with it being not a great program under Tom Allen, except for the 2020 year. Like, can you continue to hit the recruiting trail? Can you continue to tap into NIL? Because that's obviously going to be the separator in both basketball and football going forward. And, so far he's shown that he's got a way to modernize a program that's so desperately needed it, because this is the first year Indiana football has ever been this relevant. I was telling the story the other day, the beauty of going to IU when it came to football season, for much of the time I went and much of the time you went, was if a game was scheduled to start at, let's say, 2:30, you could decide at 1:30 on Saturday, it's a nice day. Let's just walk to the let's just go. And you'd have no difficulty getting in, right? I mean, the traffic wouldn't be a problem. You could walk there, you get a cab there, whatever.
those days apparently are over. Now you have to live with the possibility that, no, tickets aren't available or they're going to be jacked up. So that was the one great thing about having a bad team it was almost like Wrigley Field in the old days where you say, you want to go to a ball game? Sure, just show up and it'd be no problem. On the other hand, chances were you were going to see a crappy product, and of course, that's the beauty of what seems to be taking place now.
And it's like, I remember when I was a student, Fred Glass, the former AD, closed the tailgating lots. So the lots were like the fraternities and sororities would tailgate across 17th Street. Right. Those all closed prior to kickoff with the idea that would force students into the game. Well, most students that were over there anyways were going back to drink, at a fraternity for the rest of the afternoon and not go watch the football team. So it kind of backfired on them. But seeing the aerial shots during that Michigan game, seeing it during game day, the Nebraska game, like, it's so different. It's an out-of-body experience being like, that's my school. That's, I see Assembly Hall in the background there. I can recognize that, but I can't recognize this Memorial Stadium that looks incredible when I have truly, Dan, never seen it at capacity as a student journalist when I was there. And it's wild to me that now that's becoming the norm. Is it sustainable? We'll see in the coming years, but it is a nice change of pace that football, for once, is leading the charge.
Yeah, you're articulating it nicely. Those drone shots were beautiful. They've had some beautiful drone shots. It's a nice-looking stadium, actually, with some of the changes they made to it, but it tended to, take away from it if there were, 22,000 empty seats, and now that part of it's gone, too. So aesthetically, as somebody, I used to literally live in apartments that I think don't even exist now, right next door to the stadium. It's like an out-of-body experience, which is all good. We could talk IU football all day, but I do want to include some Vikings-Bears conversation as well. But before we do that, just a general, how are you doing? I mean, it seems from afar you couldn't be doing better. It's obviously, it appears from a career standpoint, it's just going great. Are you happy with it? Are you overwhelmed with it? Are there days where you go, my God, I'm on too many damn platforms? Or how, in general, is Courtney Cronin handling all this stuff?
As well as I think you can. When you're in season, it feels like, you're juggling 40 things at once, but it's obviously a good thing. Being busy is a good thing. And it's, I had this conversation with Matt Collar this morning. I was doing his podcast because we always do it during Bears-Vikings week. And I had to think back to when the Bears started this, because, of course, this was the busiest offseason. They trade Justin Fields. They make way to bring in Caleb Williams. They rework a couple positions on the offense, certainly not the offensive line, which is an issue as to why Caleb has struggled. But nonetheless, it was a really busy offseason. And then you get to minicamp, you get a break, and then you're back July 19th. Because remember, they had the Hall of Fame game. So I've been sprinting, it feels like, since mid-July. And at some point you look up and you realize how much time's passed and how much you've done and everywhere you've been. And it's kind of surreal to think about. I've been down here now for 2.5 years home. And I was in Minnesota for 5. So it's about half the time that I was covering the Vikings, living between Uptown and South Minneapolis. And it's wild how much my life has changed since I was there covering the Vikings, but also how much things do in a way stay the same. But I'm very grateful for the opportunities that I've received, and it's been, coming down here, I've been able to expand my platform in a lot of different ways, and I'm grateful for it. I hope that the next 2.5 years are just as good as the first 2.5.
What would you say is the biggest difference between now that you've been there, you knew the market there already, but now you're back in it in sort of a different capacity. What's the biggest difference between the Chicago market and the Twin Cities market?
Well, it's interesting because I feel like Vikings fans, at least when I covered them, and certainly from afar the last few years, you see a great start to the 2022 season. I was reading Seifert's article this morning about how, that was an 8-2 start. And then this is an 8-2 start, but vastly different. And to me, it kind of feels like at points Vikings fans have been burned, and they're like, all right, we'll see you in the playoffs sort of mentality, because now they feel that they've got the right formula to where it doesn't feel like lightning in a bottle that could be combustible at any minute, kind of like that 2022 season where you weren't sure if it was real or not. So the vibe that I get just from keeping a pulse on what the fan base is like up there is that it's very different than Chicago, because this fan base down here thought that the Vikings were going to be terrible, that J.J. McCarthy was going to need some time to develop, that Sam Darnold was not going to have this career resurgence, that they'd have a much easier time in these games, which we know anytime the Vikings and the Bears play at Soldier Field, weird things always happen. They're never normal games unless it's like some wacko thing that like happens when one team's already clinched the playoffs and the other's just, playing backups. But they are so starved down here for the promise to be fulfilled. Everything they've been told all along, like they're finally going to get a franchise quarterback. They promise they won't screw him up. Like, Minnesota has been, the peak of stability for a long time. And I know that, some people will see that and say, well, they just had to they fired them, they fired Rick, they had to start over. Well, that was still stability for about a decade. Like, the Vikings do it right in that sense. The Bears have not. The Bears have gone through this revolving door at quarterback, which has been the byproduct of front offices and coaching staffs going over their skis. And the fan base feels that. So that's why it feels like it's DEFCON 1 here a lot of days when there's these losses like the Hail Mary and losing to Green Bay by a point because you block a field goal, it gets blocked. I feel like this fan base, I feel badly for them. And I know, like, we've talked about the Vikings and, the 4 Super Bowls that they didn't win and all those things, which of course feels like ancient history now. But that's torture. But I think is more torture is what the Bears fans have gone through, where they finally have a quarterback. They can see the potential, but they also see in real time how this current team is actively screwing him up, which of course they're trying to mitigate now that they made the change to OC. But that's not something Vikings fans can claim, to have had that much quarterback futility over the history of the franchise.
The assumption is that Eberflus cannot survive this, even if the Bears philosophically don't like making changes like that in the middle of the season, and maybe it's not even practical to do. Is that your working assumption?
How can it not be? How can you possibly, Ryan Poles has said this, the general manager, he came here to break cycles. And the systemic failure of this organization over the last, they haven't had a true drafted and developed franchise quarterback since Sid Luckman. And I know people chuckle at that and roll their eyes, but it's true. The systemic failure of this organization to somehow manage to get it wrong time and again, to squander opportunity, whether it was drafting Trubisky over Patrick Mahomes, and pairing him with the coaching staff that was on the way out, and then repeating that cycle with passing Trubisky off to Matt Nagy, that not working out, drafting Justin Fields, it not working out with the coaching staff, like rinse, repeat. And that's a cycle that goes back to, the Jerry Angelo days, like long before this with Lovey and, all of those things. And Mark Trestman before, sandwiched in between there too. It's just really difficult to envision a team that says it wants to do things differently. And there are different elements here that were not in play the last time this thing went around, one of which is Kevin Warren, the big wild card in all of this. Yep. Is he going to be making the call at the end of the season, since Ryan Poles made the call to keep Eberflus? If Poles wants to keep him, Kevin Warren could easily override that because he's his boss. Like, that didn't happen in the Ted Phillips era of the Chicago Bears. So it's hard to believe that you would be willing to wreck and to ruin the return on investment you could get from a number 1 overall pick at quarterback by clearly sticking with a head coach who just isn't the right fit. Doesn't mean he's not a good defensive coach and a good defensive coordinator, but as a head coach who's now had to fire 2 offensive coordinators in a calendar year, that's not a good look. And you can't tell me that Caleb Williams wouldn't fare better with somebody like a Cliff Kingsbury or a Ben Johnson, or somebody that you have to pay above and beyond for, and not go on the cheap, not go for the discount, not go for the honorable mention sort of coaching hire when you could easily go for like the gold medal and make this thing work and see it through and take being a winning organization seriously.
But this is Poles' head coach, and this is Poles' offensive line, which seems still to me from afar to be the biggest unsung part of the offensive dysfunction. So do you assume Poles is safe?
I've talked with people around the league about this because it's hard. Like every day I feel differently about it.
Mm-hmm.
He did come in with Matt Eberflus. Depending upon who you ask, you're going to get a different answer about why that marriage was what it was, whether Ryan Poles really did pick Matt Eberflus as his head coach. Was it more of an arranged thing? All of that. So I think that Kevin Warren and Ryan Poles do have a very genuine bond where Poles sees him as in a mentor sort of role, but also is able to acquiesce to him knowing that he's the team president, he's the CEO of this organization. I better have him on my good side, or I better be on his good side to make sure that no matter what, I'm safe. So it's a tough spot for him to be in right now because he went through 2.5 years up to this point, or really 2 years of a rebuild where it was a thankless job. You had a season where you were set up to completely fail by design to go get the number 1 overall pick in 2023. You make the trades, you do the stuff with Carolina, you start getting better. You finished the season last year 7-10. You could see the improvement. This was supposed to be the year that this thing takes off, and it really hasn't, and it probably won't. Like, they have the hardest remaining strength of schedule in the NFL, so I think it's very difficult to look at the situation and be like, you want to run this back with this head coach, really? And that's on Ryan Poles so far right now to make that decision. But there's also a chance that since it is his roster, you're right about that. Kevin Warren's the wild card in all of it.
Yeah, he's a wild card. Yeah.
We truly don't know if he's just sitting this one quietly right now until like January 8th or whatever the Monday after the season is, to be like, no, I'm done with all of this. Like, that would not surprise me in the least if I do think Ryan Poles is safe, but it would not surprise me in the least if Kevin just cleans house and says, I'm getting my people in here. I'm moving on from both of them.
If you're speaking to Vikings fans directly, what should they worry about this week? Other than, as you say, weird things have tended to happen regardless of the relative strengths of these two teams. I think especially at Soldier Field, it appears, although maybe not so much lately, but there's certainly a lot of history there. Beyond that, is there something you say, well, the Bears, they picked up a little something offensively that despite how badly it ended last week? Or do you say, no, this is a game that if the Vikings do what they're supposed to do, they really should not have any difficulty on Sunday in Chicago? It
should be the latter, but where you saw improvement from Caleb was getting the ball out quickly, being able to beat the blitz. And we know that is Brian Flores' MO. And that's fine. But Caleb has been pretty good at being able to identify it pre-snap and post-snap and find a way to get the ball out quickly. Now, he's still struggling to move the ball downfield on deeper passes when he's got two very good deep threats between DJ Moore and Rome Odunze. So I think that's an area that they manipulate. Most teams have had a lot of success doing that, and he's also been off target on some throws. So there's still those issues, but the areas that the offense improved last week are areas that I expect them to try to continue going forward. We know how the Vikings fare against the run. They're dealing with a banged-up running back right now in DeAndre Swift, who's got a groin injury, but he did practice in limited capacity today. So there's areas that they can like manipulate and capitalize on. But I'd say the strength of this team still is the secondary. Yes, Jalen Johnson ended up getting tripped up in Christian Watson's shoe last week, and whether that was a catch or not, who knows? That was a moment that I think was, just like he said, it was comical the way that they lost that game, and that was a moment where it's like literally anything that could go wrong would. But they're still a really good unit. Now, does that mean he's going to shadow Justin Jefferson? No, that's not the way that they play defense in Chicago. They play sides. They play left and right, and there will be times where Jefferson is on the number one cornerback on this team, and that's going to be a great matchup, but I don't anticipate, I feel like more times than not, they're going to have, the best receiver in the NFL on Terrell Smith and Tyreek Stevenson, because those two are now in a rotation. So I don't think the Vikings should have a lot of problems with the Bears. But to Chicago's credit last week, they came out differently. And a lot of times a coaching change will galvanize a team. I think that Thomas Brown looks, feels, and sounds like a real football coach in ways that nervous Shane Waldron at the podium did not.
Right.
But
yes.
It's, we're 2 weeks of this now. I just don't think you're going to get a team that looks like it did against Arizona and New England, where there was no energy. They were completely flat, and they, were packing it in. It felt at moments. This is a division game. This matters, and it doesn't just matter for now. It matters for the development of Caleb Williams going forward, and there are guys who are going to be a part of that next year who realize that and take it seriously.
Great to catch up. Outstanding as always, Courtney Cronin. We always appreciate the time you give us, and we'll be in touch down the road. Thanks again.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Courtney Cronin, one of the best, man. I still miss having her on every week, although we got a great roster right now as well. Music Now, Vikings podcast, followed by your Minnesota Wild against the Oilers tomorrow. Picks, Ben Gessling and Lavelle on the Friday Football Beast. We'll talk to you at 3.
Whenever you need me, I'll be there. I'll be around.
Now you can get Cox Internet and one unlimited mobile line for $80 a month, all with Wi-Fi equipment included and no annual contract. If only getting it all was always that easy. Like having a night out and getting a good night's sleep. Get it all with Cox. Get Cox Internet and one unlimited mobile line for $80 a month. Visit cox.com/value. Limited time offer for new customers only. No annual contract means no minimum term agreement and no early termination fees. Additional restrictions apply.